Picture this, a face like a porcelain doll, eyes that could hold the world's sorrow, floating across your screen like a ghost from a bygone era. That's Lillian Gish, right? The fragile flower of silent film? The delicate damsel perpetually in distress? Sure, on screen, she often looked like a gentle breeze could knock her over. Her ethereal beauty became the stuff of legend, the face that launched 1,000 close-ups. But behind the scenes, behind that luminous, almost otherworldly presence, this woman had a spine made of steel and the business savvy of a Wall Street shark wrapped in lace. She wasn't just some passive participant in the flickering dawn of cinema. She was one of its chief architects, a powerhouse disguised as a petal. Remember her freezing, and I mean literally freezing, on an actual ice floe in Way Down East? Yeah, that wasn't CGI, folks. That wasn't some stunt double braving the chill. That was Lillian, embodying pure grit dressed in vintage clothing, risking life and limb for the perfect shot. It wasn't about victimhood. It was about commitment, a testament to a toughness that belied her fragile image. As she herself reportedly quipped later about the ordeal, perhaps with a twinkle in those famous orbs, Mr. Griffith was concerned. He himself was cozy and warm, sitting not far away in his sealskin coat. Even recounting danger, she maintained a certain dry wit. She didn't just stumble into Hollywood history. She actively shaped it, survived its brutal transformations, navigated its treacherous studio politics, and somehow managed to do it all with an artistic integrity that feels rarer than a genuinely candid celebrity interview today. Her life wasn't just a movie. It was an epic saga of resilience in the face of constant change. She once reflected, "I think the things that are necessary in my profession are these: taste, talent, and tenacity." She possessed all three in abundance, particularly that last one. So, buckle up, grab your popcorn. Or maybe you'll need some smelling salts, because honestly, she went through a lot. Hollywood Unveiled is about to dive into the incredible, surprising, and utterly resilient life of the woman who is so much more than just the first lady of silent film. This is the story of Lillian Gish, the Victorian ghost who became Hollywood's steel magnolia. What's the first image that comes to your mind when you think of Lillian Gish? Let us know down in the comments. Before the silver screen made her immortal, Lillian Diana Gish entered the world on October 14, 1893, in Springfield, Ohio. Now, Springfield wasn't exactly the glitz and glam we associate with movie stars today. Think more along the lines of cornfields and a quiet, Midwestern determination. Her parents were James Lee Gish and Mary Robinson McConnell Gish. James was, by most accounts, a charming but restless salesman, the kind of guy who could sell his family on the dream of stability, then promptly disappear chasing the next shiny opportunity, leaving promises scattered like dropped pennies. He drifted in and out of their lives, a charismatic phantom whose absence would cast a long shadow. This left Mary Robinson McConnell, a former actress herself, as the unexpected, unwilling, but utterly formidable pillar of the family. Meet Mama Gish, folks, arguably the original momager, holding the fragile family unit together with sheer grit, determination, and probably some cleverly hidden stage makeup for emergencies. She was the anchor in their swirling world. Lillian would later say of her mother, "She had more courage than any man or woman I ever knew." With James often gone, money was perpetually tight, a constant source of anxiety that would instill in Lillian a lifelong wariness about finances and a fierce drive for security. And then there was Dorothy, Lillian's younger sister, born just a couple of years later. Dorothy was the other half of the soon-to-be famous Gish sister act, often described as the funnier, sassier, more impulsive one, the bubbler counterpoint to Lillian's serious intensity. Imagine them, two little girls, already learning the hard lessons of life before they'd even mastered long division. Because when your charming salesman father takes yet another powder, and the bills are piling up higher than the laundry, what's a resourceful former actress mother to do? Put her daughters on the stage, of course. Mary Gish dusted off her theatrical connections, and soon, young Lillian and Dorothy were treading the boards in melodrama touring companies. Forget stable childhoods with white picket fences. Their reality was a whirlwind of train journeys, cheap boarding houses, and drafty theaters. Picture this, packing your entire life, the few belongings you owned, your hopes, your fears, into a single, battered trunk every few weeks. Performing in dusty, dimly lit theaters where the most appreciative audience member might be a particularly judgmental rat lurking in the rafters. That was the Gish sisters' childhood classroom. They learned their lines, hit their marks, and probably learned how to dodge sketchy landlords faster than most kids learn their multiplication tables. It was a nomadic, precarious existence, a constant hustle just to keep food on the table and a roof, however leaky it might be, over their heads. As Lillian recalled, "We lived in trunks," a simple statement, but it speaks volumes about the instability and constant motion that defined their early years. Even as a child, Lillian was different, not the boisterous, attention-seeking type you might expect from a future star. Contemporaries described her as a serious little thing, all huge, watchful eyes and a quiet, absorbing intensity. You got the sense she wasn't just seeing things around her, the backstage chaos, the worn costumes, the flicker of the gaslights, the emotions playing across actors' faces. She was studying them, filing them away for future reference. Dorothy might be charming the stagehands or sneaking extra cookies, while Lillian, even then, was likely observing the dynamics, perhaps even mentally counting the house receipts to see if they'd make rent that week. This early seriousness wasn't aloofness. It was the foundation of her focus, her incredible discipline that would serve her so well later on. It was the quiet beginning of a mind that would dissect performance and demand artistic truth. That relentless, often grueling, childhood on the road wasn't just a series of temporary gigs. It was the crucible that forged the woman Lillian Gish would become. Every challenge, every hardship, every small triumph added another layer to her character, shaping the resilience and artistic integrity that would define her legendary career. First, there was the impact of her father's abandonment. James Gish's unreliability wasn't just a source of emotional pain. It was a practical disaster that forced Lillian, from an incredibly young age, to understand the precariousness of life and the absolute necessity of self-reliance, particularly financial self-reliance. This wasn't just about wanting nice things, it was about survival. It bred in her a deep-seated need for control over her own destiny and her finances, a trait that would later make her a formidable negotiator in the studio system. She learned early on that depending on others, especially charming men who made grand promises, could lead straight to heartbreak and empty pockets. "Security is not the meaning of my life," she'd state years later, adding, "Great opportunities are worth the risk." Perhaps this outlook stemmed from having little security except what she and her family could earn through sheer effort. Then there was the direct influence of the stage itself. Life in traveling melodrama troupes was anything but glamorous. It demanded iron discipline. You showed up on time, knew your lines, hit your marks, and performed whether you had a fever, a broken heart, or hadn't eaten a square meal all day. This instilled in Lillian an unwavering professional ethic. She learned the mechanics of performance, how to project emotion, even if it was the broad, gestural style of the time, how to hold an audience, and crucially, how to work tirelessly. She wasn't just playing make-believe, she was learning a craft under the most demanding conditions. It was here, amidst the painted backdrops and flickering footlights, that she developed her extraordinary ability to focus and her dedication to giving her absolute best, no matter the circumstances. Beyond the practical skills, her early experiences fostered a keen sense of observation. Constantly surrounded by actors, stagehands, audiences, and the diverse inhabitants of the towns they passed through, Lillian became a collector of human behavior. She stored away gestures, expressions, reactions, a mental library of authenticity she could draw upon later. "I never stopped studying," she once remarked. "I think that's the conditioning of childhood." She wasn't just learning lines, she was learning people. This curiosity extended beyond the stage. She was fascinated by the world around her, including the burgeoning technology of moving pictures, those flickering images that were starting to captivate audiences in Nickelodeons. And crucially, there was the unwavering bond with her mother and sister. In a world that felt constantly shifting and uncertain, Mary and Dorothy were Lillian's constants. They were her collaborators, her confidants, her protectors, and sometimes, undoubtedly, her rivals. This intense family unit fostered a deep sense of loyalty and mutual support, a belief in sticking together against the odds. Family wasn't just important, it was everything. This loyalty would extend to her professional relationships later, particularly her long and complex association with D.W. Griffith. Imagine tiny Lillian, maybe 8 or 9 years old, perhaps facing a minor stage mishap, a missed cue, a collapsing prop, okay. Maybe she wasn't single-handedly facing down drunken hecklers, though knowing her later grit, you can almost picture it. But you can bet she handled those inevitable small crises with a composure that belied her age. Stories abound of the sisters' professionalism even as children. One anecdote suggests that if one sister forgot a line, the other would subtly feed it to her without breaking character, a seamless display of teamwork born of necessity. This wasn't just acting practice, it was survival training. Every dodgy boarding house, every skipped meal, every long train ride through the night forged the incredible resilience that would become her trademark. It was the steel being tempered long before Hollywood ever knew her name. The America Lillian Gish grew up traversing at the turn of the 20th century was a nation in flux. It was a time of burgeoning industrial might, waves of immigration changing the faces of cities, and the clatter and smoke of progress filling the air. New forms of entertainment were bubbling up, competing for the public's pennies, vaudeville circuits, amusement parks, and most intriguingly, those primitive, flickering moving pictures shown in storefront theaters called Nickelodeons. The Gish family's nomadic life threw them right into the heart of this changing landscape. They saw more of America through dusty train windows and from the stages of small-town opera houses than most people experienced in a lifetime. But let's be clear, it wasn't exactly a scenic grand tour. It was often a grind through gritty industrial towns and isolated rural communities, each presenting its own set of challenges and questionable accommodations. Socially, it was still very much a man's world. Opportunities for women were largely confined to the domestic sphere, teaching, or low-paying factory work. Yet, paradoxically, the stage, and increasingly, the nascent film industry, offered a unique, if sometimes precarious, path for women to achieve a degree of autonomy, creative expression, and crucially, financial independence. Actresses like Mary Gish might have been forced onto the stage by circumstance, but they carved out a living and a measure of control unavailable to many of their peers. Lillian and Dorothy grew up witnessing this firsthand, the potential power and the inherent vulnerability of being working women in the public eye. Their daily reality was a stark contrast. On one hand, there was the constant struggle, the uncertainty of the next booking, the threadbare costumes, the endless search for affordable lodging, the feeling of being perpetual outsiders. They were constantly dodging landlords, stretching pennies, and probably consuming more than their fair share of questionable boarding house meals. Lillian later dryly noted the upside of their poverty: it simplifies life. When you have no money, you have no decision to make. It was a life lived on the edge, demanding constant vigilance and resourcefulness. But on the other hand, emanating from places like New York and, increasingly, sunny California, was the magnetic pull of the movies. This new medium held a flickering promise, a promise of something bigger, brighter, potentially more stable, and definitely more lucrative than the relentless touring circuit. Films were reaching vast audiences, creating overnight sensations, and building a new kind of mythology. For young actresses like Lillian and Dorothy, who had already honed their craft the hard way, the allure of this new frontier must have been powerful. Seriously, who wouldn't want to trade leaky roofs and flea-bitten boarding houses for the potential of Hollywood sunshine and a steady paycheck? Even if that sunshine came packaged with demanding directors, chaotic sets, and initially questionable scripts, this environment, this blend of constant movement, financial insecurity, and the dawning possibilities of a new art form was the final stage of Lillian's early training. It reinforced the resilience forged in her childhood, forcing her to adapt, endure, and keep moving forward. But it also likely nurtured a deeper longing, a desire not just to survive, but to find a place where her burgeoning artistic sensibilities could flourish. It wasn't just about escaping the grind, it was about seeking work that had meaning, stability, and the potential for genuine artistry. The grit and grime of the road had prepared her, but the glimmer of the movies offered a destination. The stage had taught her discipline, but film offered a new language, a new intimacy, and a chance to build something lasting. Her journey towards artistic integrity had begun long before she ever stepped in front of a camera. The year is 1912. Imagine walking into a chaotic, bustling early film studio, probably the Biograph Company's brownstone on East 14th Street in New York. The air likely smells faintly of developing chemicals, stale coffee, and maybe a hint of desperation. Actors in heavy makeup jostle past technicians wrestling with primitive cameras and sputtering arc lights. And amidst this creative chaos, 18-year-old Lillian and her slightly younger sister Dorothy, encouraged by their childhood friend, the already famous Mary Pickford, arrange a meeting with the studio's top director, a formidable figure named David Wark Griffith. No pressure, right? Just meeting the man who was essentially in the process of inventing modern cinematic language. Griffith, a former actor and playwright, was pioneering techniques that would transform moving pictures from novelty acts into a powerful narrative art form. He was experimenting with camera angles, editing rhythms, and, crucially, a more naturalistic style of acting. When he met the Gish sisters, he reportedly wasn't initially bowled over. They were slight, perhaps seemed unassuming compared to the more theatrical performers he often worked with. Legend has it, he tested their mettle immediately, perhaps with a bit of playful menace involving a prop gun, to gauge their reactions. Whatever the test, they passed. He saw something in their youthful energy and, particularly in Lillian, a certain captivating quality. He signed them both on the spot for the Biograph Company. Their starting salary, a shared $50 a week. Not riches, but a significant step up from the uncertainty of the road. Their entrance into film coincided with the era of the one-reeler. These were short films, typically running about 10 to 15 minutes, churned out at an astonishing rate. Think of them as the appetizers of the film world, little bites of melodrama, comedy, or adventure. Working at Biograph under Griffith was like attending the world's most intense, hands-on film school. Lillian and Dorothy appeared in dozens of these short films, often playing multiple roles within the same week, learning the nuances of screen acting on the fly. One crucial difference from the stage was the power of the close-up. While not solely invented by Griffith, he and his brilliant cameraman Billy Bitzer refined and used it with unprecedented emotional impact. And Lillian Gish, with her remarkably expressive face and those large, soulful eyes, became its ideal subject. Before this, actors on screen often gestured broadly, as if playing to the back row of a theater that didn't exist. Griffith realized the camera could capture the subtlest flicker of emotion, the unsaid thought registering in a performer's gaze. Lillian instinctively understood this. As she put it, acting for the camera required a different kind of projection. In the theater, you have to reach the gallery gods. In the movies, you have to reach the heart. Griffith saw that ethereal face, that apparent fragility combined with an undercurrent of strength, and basically wet eureka. The perfect embodiment of suffering beauty. Now, that assessment might sound a little creepy by today's standards, but from a directorial standpoint, Griffith recognized raw cinematic potential when he saw it. Her look became her trademark, but it was her ability to convey complex emotions with minimal apparent effort that truly set her apart. Their very first credited film together for Biograph was An Unseen Enemy. Released in 1912, it's a simple melodrama where the two sisters are trapped in a room by a sinister housekeeper and threatened by a gun poking through a hole in the wall. Talk about starting with a bang. It showcased their natural screen presence and their ability to convey fear and vulnerability convincingly. Watching it now, you can already see glimpses of the Gish magic. Working at Biograph wasn't just about acting. It was about learning the entire filmmaking process. Griffith fostered a collaborative, almost familial atmosphere among his core group of actors, which included talents like Mary Pickford, Lionel Barrymore, and Max Sennett. They rehearsed intensely, discussed character motivations, and even contributed ideas. Lillian, with her observant nature and quick intelligence, soaked it all up. She learned about camera placement, lighting, editing, developing an understanding of the technical craft that would inform her performances and later, her business decisions. A close working relationship rapidly developed between Lillian and Griffith. He became her mentor, pushing her, challenging her, molding her screen persona. She, in turn, became his most sensitive instrument, capable of translating his artistic visions into nuanced, unforgettable performances. There was a deep mutual trust and respect, allowing them to experiment and take risks together. Reflecting on meeting him, she recalled feeling his intensity. He had the most penetrating eyes I ever expect to see. Another time, perhaps showcasing her early confidence, she apparently told Griffith she felt film actors had an edge over stage actors because we don't have to shout. Whether apocryphal or not, it captures her immediate grasp of the intimacy the camera offered. In just a few short years at Biograph, Lillian Gish went from an unknown stage waif to a burgeoning starlet, poised on the brink of cinematic immortality, all thanks to that fateful meeting in a noisy, chaotic studio. The obscurity of the road was rapidly receding in the rearview mirror. Leaving the relative anonymity of Biograph shorts behind, Lillian Gish, under D.W. Griffith's ambitious direction, entered a period that would not only solidify her stardom, but also shape the very landscape of American cinema. These weren't just movies, they were events, cinematic milestones that pushed boundaries, provoked conversation, and showcased Gish's evolving, extraordinary talent. First came the cinematic earthquake known as The Birth of a Nation in 1915. Playing Elsie Stoneman, the daughter of an abolitionist senator who falls for a Confederate colonel and is menaced by a lecherous mixed-race politician, Gish found herself at the center of a phenomenon. This movie was huge, like Marvel blockbuster-level huge for its time, smashing box office records and captivating audiences across the country. It was epic in scope, technically innovative, and featured powerful performances, including Gish's portrayal of imperiled innocence. It made her a household name overnight, arguably America's first true movie superstar. However, and it's a massive however, we absolutely have to talk about the racism. The film's heroic depiction of the Ku Klux Klan and its virulently racist portrayal of Black Americans, often played by white actors in blackface, are deeply offensive and historically reprehensible. Its release sparked widespread protests and condemnation, and its legacy remains intensely problematic. While analyzing Gish's career, it's crucial to acknowledge this toxic aspect. Birth catapulted her to fame, but it also inextricably tied her to a film that caused real social harm and remains a stain on cinematic history. She rarely spoke critically of the film or Griffith's intentions later in life, often defending his artistic vision, a stance that reflects the complex loyalties and perhaps the different social perspectives of her era. Stung by the fierce criticism of Birth, Griffith responded with an even more colossal undertaking, Intolerance in 1916. This sprawling, multi-narrative epic wove together for stories from different historical periods, ancient Babylon, Judea, Renaissance France, and modern America, to explore themes of hypocrisy, injustice, and, yes, intolerance through the ages. Lillian Gish appeared in the modern story, but also served as the film's unifying motif, playing the symbolic woman who rocks the cradle, representing eternal motherhood and continuity. The sheer scale of Intolerance was mind-boggling, with massive sets like the legendary Babylonian walls and thousands of extras. While a commercial disappointment compared to Birth, its complex structure perhaps confusing audiences, Intolerance showcased Griffith's boundless ambition and Gish's iconic status. Her serene image, endlessly rocking the cradle, became one of the most enduring symbols of silent cinema, a testament to her powerful, almost spiritual screen presence achieved through subtle means. If birth made her famous and intolerance made her iconic, then Broken Blossoms in 1919 cemented her reputation as one of the screen's finest dramatic actresses. Here, Gish delivered what many consider the pinnacle of her silent film performances as Lucy Burrows, a tragically abused young girl in London's gritty Limehouse district who finds brief solace with a gentle Chinese immigrant played by Richard Barthelmess. The film itself, while still viewed through a lens of early 20th century racial perspectives, was notable for its sensitivity and poetic atmosphere. Gish's portrayal of Lucy was simply devastating. She conveyed profound vulnerability, terror, and fleeting moments of happiness with heartbreaking subtlety. The famous scene where Lucy, beaten by her brutal father played by Donald Crisp, forces herself to smile by pushing the corners of her mouth up with her fingers is a masterclass in physical acting. And the sequence where she frantically barricades herself in a cramped closet, her eyes wide with primal fear, is pure acting genius. She conveyed more raw terror with just her trembling fingers and frantic gaze than most actors could achieve with screams and flailing. Critics basically lost their collective minds. This wasn't just emoting. It was art. Broken Blossoms proved Gish was far more than just a pretty face enduring hardship. She was an artist capable of plumbing incredible emotional depths. Then came the film that forever fused Lillian Gish's image with astonishing physical courage, Way Down East in 1920. Playing Anna Moore, a naive country girl betrayed and cast out into a winter storm, Gish faced her most demanding role yet, not just emotionally, but physically. The film's climax is legendary. Anna, fainting on a frozen river, drifts towards a deadly waterfall on chunks of moving ice. And Lillian did it for real. Forget stunt doubles, forget studio tanks. Griffith insisted on authenticity. So, for days on end, during freezing weather near White River Junction, Vermont, Lillian Gish lay on actual blocks of ice floating down a dangerously real river. Her face and hair would reportedly freeze. Crew members had to pry her hand loose from the ice floe at one point because it had frozen fast. Can you even imagine? Her hand was reportedly frozen solid to the ice. Most actresses today might demand carefully calibrated Evian water spritzes for a crying scene. She just asked for maybe some feeling back in her fingers after risking pneumonia and frostbite. This incredible act of dedication wasn't just about daredevilry. It was about her absolute commitment to the role and the film. The sequence became one of the most famous in cinema history, cementing Gish's image not just as a suffering heroine, but as someone with unbelievable grit and professionalism hidden beneath that delicate exterior. Finally, as the silent era waned, Gish delivered another powerhouse performance in The Wind, released in 1928 and directed by the brilliant Swedish filmmaker Victor Sjöström. Cast against type as Letty Mason, a sensitive Virginian woman driven to the brink of madness by the relentless wind, isolation, and brutality of the Texas frontier, Gish was extraordinary. It's a raw, psychologically intense performance, far removed from the gentle heroines she often played. She battles the elements, lustful men, and her own fraying sanity. However, the studio, MGM, balked at the film's bleak, originally intended tragic ending where Letty wanders into the desert to die. They insisted on tacking on a ridiculously unconvincing happy ending. Gish and Sjöström fought it, but the studio prevailed. MGM wanted sunshine and rainbows. Gish and Sjöström had delivered a gritty, psychologically harrowing dust storm of despair. Despite the compromised ending, The Wind is now rightly regarded as a masterpiece of silent cinema and features one of Gish's most complex and modern performances. Unfortunately, the studio, perhaps unhappy with its darkness or sensing the imminent dominance of sound, gave it a limited release and minimal promotion, essentially burying it. These films, each a landmark in its own way, built the legend of Lillian Gish. Birth of a Nation might have ignited controversy, but Broken Blossoms evoked collective weeping, far more productive honestly. Way Down East showcased her unbelievable physical commitment, while The Wind revealed a startling psychological depth. Through these roles, she wasn't just portraying characters. She was actively shaping the possibilities of screen acting, demonstrating both profound artistic integrity and the sheer resilience required to endure the often brutal demands of early filmmaking. Lillian Gish's path to legendary status wasn't paved entirely with roses and critical acclaim. The Hollywood she navigated was a rapidly evolving, often cutthroat environment, and her journey was marked by significant challenges that tested both her artistic principles and her remarkable endurance. Surviving, let alone thriving, required navigating a veritable hurricane of changing technologies, powerful egos, and shifting audience tastes. One of the most pivotal, and likely difficult, decisions of her career came in the early 1920s, leaving the creative umbrella of D.W. Griffith. After years of intense collaboration that had defined both their careers, Gish sought greater independence and control over her projects and finances. Breaking up is hard to do, especially when your professional partner basically invented your career trajectory and you shared such a deep artistic bond. Griffith reportedly tried to dissuade her, perhaps appealing to loyalty or warning her about the wolves of the studio system. But Gish, armed with the business sense honed by years of family financial insecurity and her own growing artistic vision, struck out on her own, signing a lucrative contract with a new company, Inspiration Pictures, which released through First National. This move signaled her determination to be more than just a director's muse. She wanted to be the mistress of her own cinematic destiny. This newfound independence, however, brought her into direct conflict with the burgeoning power of the major studios, particularly the monolithic Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, or MGM, where she later signed a contract in the mid-1920s, headed by the formidable Louis B. Mayer and production chief Irving Thalberg. MGM epitomized the studio system, a highly efficient, star-studded dream factory focused on producing commercially successful films that adhered to certain formulas. Gish, with her unwavering commitment to artistic quality, often clashed with their more market-driven approach. She fought for better scripts, argued against casting choices she felt were wrong, and resisted attempts to dilute the dramatic intensity of her roles, as seen with the imposed ending of The Wind. She wanted art. They often prioritized assembly line products designed for mass appeal. Cue the dramatic showdowns, maybe fewer actual fistfights and more icy glares, tense meetings, and strongly worded letters exchanged between the delicate-looking star and the powerful studio moguls. Legend has it, she once stared down Louis B. Mayer himself during a contract dispute. Now, maybe she didn't actually make him cry, though wouldn't that be a story? But you can bet her quiet resolve and sharp intellect made even the toughest studio heads think twice before arbitrarily messing with her script or her artistic choices again. "I wasn't property," she asserted, reflecting her refusal to be merely an asset controlled by others. Then came the seismic shift that threw the entire industry into turmoil, the arrival of sound film, or talkies, in the late 1920s. For many silent stars, whose fame rested on pantomime and visual expressiveness, sound was a career killer. Voices didn't match personas, accents were deemed unsuitable, or the more intimate acting style required felt unnatural. Lillian Gish actually transitioned relatively smoothly in terms of her voice. It was clear, cultured, and perfectly acceptable. She made her talkie debut in One Romantic Night in 1930. The problem wasn't her ability to speak. It was that Hollywood, in its initial frenzy over sound, seemed to forget what made her great in the first place. The scripts offered to her often lacked the depth and complexity of her silent work. Suddenly, dialogue overshadowed nuance, and the subtle, internalized performances she excelled at were less in demand. Hollywood seemed to forget she could act, they just needed people who could talk. The roles became less challenging, often relying on her established persona rather than pushing her artistically. Compounding these issues was the ever-present pressure of public perception and typecasting. Having risen to fame as the epitome of virtuous suffering and fragile innocence, Gish constantly battled against being confined to that box. While she could play vulnerability like no one else, She yearned for roles that showcased strength, complexity, and even darkness, as she did in The Wind. The studios, however, often preferred the commercially safer bet of Lillian Gish, the ethereal victim. Maintaining her artistic integrity meant constantly pushing back against these expectations, seeking out challenging material, and sometimes choosing unemployment over compromising her standards. Her creative process itself was a testament to her dedication. She didn't just show up, put on a costume, and recite lines or think thoughts loudly in the silent era. She prepared meticulously. For The Wind, she reportedly immersed herself in studies of pioneer women and the psychological effects of isolation and relentless environmental hardship. Her physical commitment in Way Down East is legendary. She believed in inhabiting her characters, understanding their motivations, flaws and all. You could almost say she was practicing a form of method acting before it was even a defined concept, focusing on internal truth over external histrionics. The camera is objective, she observed. It sees everything, you have to be honest with it. Each of these hurdles, leaving Griffith, battling studio heads, navigating the transition to sound, fighting typecasting, was a significant test. They demanded not just talent, but immense fortitude, strategic thinking, and an unwavering belief in her own artistic worth. These challenges weren't just bumps in the road. They were the proving grounds for the resilience and artistic integrity that defined her. She wasn't just surviving the Hollywood hurricane. She was learning to navigate it, sometimes even harness its energy, all while fiercely protecting the artistic flame within her. What exactly was it that made Lillian Gish not just a star, but an artist who fundamentally changed screen acting? It was more than just those luminous eyes or that seemingly fragile presence. It was the Gish touch, a unique combination of technical mastery, emotional intelligence, and profound subtlety that set her apart from the often broader performance styles of her contemporaries, especially in the early days of silent film. Her signature style was rooted in internalized acting. While many silent performers relied on exaggerated gestures, dramatic posing, and overt emoting, think clutching the pearls, swooning dramatically, Gish conveyed oceans of feeling with the barest minimum of external display. She understood the power of stillness, the weight of a lingering gaze, the emotional resonance of a trembling hand or a slight downturn of the lips. She could register shock, sorrow, terror, or dawning hope with just a flicker in those incredible eyes. It was a style perfectly suited to the intimacy of the close-up, drawing the audience into the character's inner world rather than simply presenting emotions for observation. While others were busy chewing the scenery, Gish was serving gourmet emotions, prepared with precision and devastating effect. She once described her approach simply: you have to think the thoughts of the character. For her, acting wasn't about showing, it was about being. This naturalistic, psychologically grounded approach was revolutionary for its time. It helped elevate screen acting from mere pantomime to a sophisticated art form. She demonstrated that subtlety could be far more powerful than histrionics, that quiet intensity could resonate more deeply than loud declarations. Her performances in films like Broken Blossoms and The Wind remain astonishingly modern precisely because of this emotional honesty and lack of artificiality. She wasn't just playing at emotion, she seemed to be experiencing it, allowing the audience to feel it with her. Beyond her individual performances, Gish's impact on the industry was significant. She set an unparalleled standard for professionalism and dedication. Her willingness to endure extreme physical hardship for Way Down East, her meticulous preparation for roles, and her fierce defense of artistic quality sent a clear message. This was serious work, demanding commitment and respect. In an industry often characterized by chaos and fleeting fame, she embodied discipline and longevity. Furthermore, Gish was one of the very first female stars to wield considerable power and influence, albeit power she constantly had to fight for and protect. Her decision to leave Griffith, her tough contract negotiations with studios like MGM, and her attempts to assert creative control over her projects were pioneering acts in an era when women, even famous actresses, were largely expected to follow orders. She wasn't content to be just a beautiful face on a poster or a pawn in the studio chess game. She saw herself as a collaborator, an artist with a voice, and she demanded to be treated as such. She paved the way for future generations of actresses who aspired to be more than just decorative objects. She proved you could be a powerhouse in pearls, delicate and dynamite. As one critic noted, she gave emotion a dignity. Her performances were like emotional stealth bombs, quiet, often unexpected, yet utterly devastating and unforgettable. They lingered long after the projector stopped flickering. Her entire career, spanning an incredible 75 years from stage debuts to late-life television appearances, stands as a testament to her enduring talent and adaptability. The style she pioneered, that focus on inner truth, expressed with subtle precision, is the very foundation of great screen acting today. Her legacy isn't just in the specific films she made, iconic though they are. It's woven into the fabric of cinematic performance itself. Her quiet intensity in Broken Blossoms, her harrowing portrayal of psychological disintegration in The Wind, her sheer physical grit on the ice floes of Way Down East. These aren't just moments in film history. They are demonstrations of the profound artistic integrity she championed and the incredible resilience that allowed her to sustain it across decades of tumultuous change in Hollywood. She basically taught Hollywood that acting could be profound, it could be subtle, and it could be art. And she did it with grace, intelligence, and that unwavering, steely spine. Behind the ethereal image projected onto screens worldwide, Lillian Gish lived a life marked by deep personal connections, fierce loyalty, and a notable degree of chosen solitude. While her professional life was intensely public, her private world was carefully guarded, centered around a few crucial relationships, most notably with her family. The most significant relationship, arguably the defining one of her personal life, was with her sister, Dorothy. They were more than just sisters. They were collaborators from childhood, partners in navigating the treacherous currents of show business, and lifelong companions. They were Hollywood's original sister act, their careers intertwined from their biograph beginnings. Think Venus and Serena, perhaps, but with more elaborate period costumes and fewer endorsement deals. Their bond was incredibly close, built on shared experiences of hardship and success, but it wasn't without its complexities. Dorothy, often seen as the more vivacious, comedic, and perhaps less intensely ambitious Gish, sometimes lived in Lillian's shadow professionally, though she was a significant star in her own right. There were undoubtedly moments of rivalry, whispered comparisons, maybe even professional jealousy. Yet, their fundamental loyalty to each other seems to have always prevailed. They supported each other through thick and thin, often living together or nearby throughout their lives. Dorothy once quipped, possibly with a mixture of affection and exasperation, that Lillian was always playing Camille offstage, as well as on, hinting at Lillian's sometimes perceived dramatic seriousness even in everyday life. But beneath any surface friction was a bedrock of shared history and deep affection. Lillian was devastated by Dorothy's death in 1968, losing not just a sister, but her closest confidant and witness to her entire extraordinary life. Their mother, Mary Gish, remained a central figure until her death in 1948. Mama Gish wasn't just the original momager. She was the rock upon which their early lives were built. Lillian's devotion to her was profound. Mary had sacrificed her own potential career, endured poverty and uncertainty, all to shepherd her daughters towards success and security. Lillian, keenly aware of this sacrifice, provided for her mother throughout her life, ensuring she enjoyed the comfort and stability they had all craved in those early years. The Gish household, often including Mary, Lillian, and Dorothy, was a matriarchal stronghold built on mutual support and shared memories. When it came to romantic love and marriage, Lillian Gish carved a distinctly unconventional path for a woman of her era, especially a famous one. She never married. This wasn't necessarily due to a lack of suitors. A woman of her beauty, intelligence, and fame certainly attracted attention. Her most significant, though intensely private, romantic involvement was a long-term relationship with the brilliant, influential, and famously acerbic drama critic George Jean Nathan. He was one of the few men considered her intellectual equal, a witty and demanding companion. They shared a deep connection for many years, but Nathan was notoriously cynical about marriage. He did eventually marry, much later in life, to actress Julie Hayden. Why didn't Lillian marry him, or anyone else? She herself offered various explanations over the years, often emphasizing her dedication to her career and her desire for independence. "Marriage, I think, is usually a disappointment," she stated frankly in an interview. Perhaps the instability of her parents' marriage left a lasting scar. Perhaps her fierce need for control, honed by years of precariousness, made the idea of relinquishing any part of her autonomy difficult. Or maybe, quite simply, she directed her own life, and marriage wasn't a role she wished to play. No co-stars needed in that particular production. She valued her freedom and her work above the conventional expectations of hearth and home. Beyond family and Nathan, Gish cultivated friendships within the industry, though she seemed to maintain a certain reserve. Her relationship with Mary Pickford, who had initially helped the Gish sisters meet Griffith, was complex. They were friends, rivals, and fellow pioneers navigating the male-dominated landscape of early Hollywood. Frenemies before the term even existed, perhaps. There was mutual respect, but also undeniable competition between America's sweetheart and the First Lady of American cinema. Gish tended to associate with intelligent, artistic individuals, valuing thoughtful conversation over glittering parties. Publicly, she projected an image of serene grace, almost untouchable dignity. Privately, accounts suggest she was fiercely loyal to those she cared about, fiercely protective of her family and her privacy, possessing a dry wit, and yes, maybe just a little bit intimidating if you crossed her or disrespected her work. There was a clear delineation between Lillian Gish the icon and Lillian Gish the private woman. The contrast between the often suffering heroines she portrayed and the strong, independent, unmarried woman she actually was remained a source of fascination throughout her life. She navigated the complexities of fame by keeping her innermost self carefully shielded, finding solace and strength in her work and in the enduring bonds of sisterhood and family. Beneath the composed facade of the First Lady of American cinema, Lillian Gish fought her own unseen battles, facing personal struggles that tested her famous resilience just as much as any studio conflict or treacherous ice floe. These weren't always visible on screen, but they shaped the woman behind the image. One of her most dramatic and life-threatening struggles came early in her burgeoning stardom, her bout with the devastating Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 to 1919. While filming Broken Blossoms, Gish contracted the deadly influenza strain that was sweeping the globe. For weeks, she lay critically ill, her condition so dire that newspapers reportedly prepared her obituary. D.W. Griffith, deeply concerned, visited her bedside. It was a terrifying ordeal that brought her face to face with her own mortality at the height of her youth and success. The Spanish flu almost took her out before Hollywood even got a chance to truly solidify her legend. Talk about resilience. Surviving such a severe illness likely left both physical and psychological marks, perhaps contributing to her slender frame or reinforcing her already formidable will to live and succeed against the odds. It was a stark reminder of life's fragility, even for someone who seemed destined for cinematic immortality. Beyond physical health scares, there was the constant psychological pressure of maintaining her public persona. Being hailed as the First Lady, the epitome of purity, grace, and often suffering virtue, created enormous expectations. Imagine the psychic weight of being world famous for playing fragile victims while knowing yourself to be disciplined, intelligent, and tough as nails. That inherent contradiction, the gap between the public image and the private reality, must have been challenging to navigate. Was she ever tired of being seen as the ethereal innocent? Did she resent the typecasting that sometimes limited her opportunities? While she rarely complained publicly, Maintaining that image while fighting for artistic control and navigating personal complexity surely required immense emotional discipline. It's got to mess with your head a bit, right, to be a symbol rather than simply a person. The burden of fame itself likely contributed to a sense of isolation. As one of the biggest stars in the world, genuine privacy was a luxury. Her decision to remain unmarried while asserting her independence might have also meant periods of loneliness, especially in a world structured around couples and traditional families. Being a strong, independent, fiercely intelligent woman in a male-dominated industry, while pioneering, could also be isolating. Finding true peers, people who understood both the artistic drive and the pressures of her unique position, was likely difficult. Her intense focus on her work and her small circle of trusted family and friends might have been, in part, a protective mechanism against the overwhelming demands and potential betrayals of public life. We can sometimes glimpse the toll of these pressures in photographs from different periods. While renowned for her luminous, almost ageless quality, there were undoubtedly moments when the famous Gish pallor looked less ethereal and more simply exhausted. The strain of relentless work schedules, artistic battles, and personal anxieties occasionally surfaced. Yet, even in photos where she appears tired or stressed, that chin is invariably held high, that posture remains erect. Even steel magnolias wilt sometimes, but her fundamental strength always seemed to reassert itself. She seemed to embody the sentiment, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger," perhaps because she'd faced down things that very nearly did kill her. How did she cope with these pressures? By all accounts, she was a creature of immense self-discipline and organization. Her coping mechanism, maybe it was alphabetizing her anxieties, as the humorous quip suggests. She was known to be incredibly neat, orderly, and methodical in her personal habits, perhaps a way of exerting control in a life that often felt chaotic. One relatable habit often mentioned was her love of reading. She was intelligent and curious, and books likely offered both escape and intellectual stimulation, a way to nourish her mind away from the demands of filmmaking. This discipline wasn't just for show. It was likely a vital tool for managing the internal and external pressures she faced. She fought demanding directors, powerful studio heads, a deadly pandemic, industry upheavals, and probably her own private doubts and fears, and honestly, that internal struggle, the lifelong effort to reconcile her artistic vision with industry demands, her public persona with her private self, and her personal desires with societal expectations, might have been the most dramatic and ultimately triumphant performance of all. It underscored, time and again, the extraordinary resilience humming beneath that serene surface. Lillian Gish's long life wasn't just defined by her iconic film roles. It was punctuated by personal moments and decisions that reveal the sharp mind, wry humor, and unwavering principles of the woman behind the legend. These anecdotes offer glimpses into how she applied that same resilience and integrity not just on set, but in directing the course of her own existence. Her business acumen, for instance, was legendary, honed perhaps by those lean early years. She wasn't just passively waiting for roles to be handed to her. She actively negotiated contracts and sought financial control in ways that were groundbreaking for an actress of her time. After leaving Griffith, she didn't just sign with any studio. She formed her own production company for a time, affiliated with Inspiration Pictures, giving her unprecedented input into scripts, casting, and director selection. Later, her deal with MGM was reportedly one of the most lucrative and artistically favorable contracts negotiated by a star up to that point. Stories circulate, perhaps embellished over time, of her calm but utterly firm negotiation tactics. Now, maybe she didn't actually throw a priceless Ming vase at a producer during a heated contract dispute, or did she? The legend certainly captures the feeling that she commanded respect, not just for her talent, but for her intelligence and her refusal to be undervalued or pushed around. She was negotiating terms that would likely make modern agents weep with envy, securing not just money, but a measure of creative freedom. She understood her worth and wasn't afraid to demand it. Her wit could be as sharp as her business sense, often deployed to deflect intrusive questions or puncture pomposity. In an era when stars' private lives were increasingly becoming public fodder, Gish fiercely guarded her own. When pressed by interviewers about why she never married, she had a repertoire of responses, ranging from emphasizing her career dedication and artist's work as his life to more evasive, slightly mischievous replies. One imagines her delivering a coolly polite but utterly final dismissal to any reporter who pried deeply, perhaps with a slight, knowing smile that suggested they were venturing into territory where they were decidedly not welcome. This wasn't just about privacy, it was about maintaining control over her own narrative. A defining moment showcasing her resilience and commitment to her craft came when her Hollywood film career began to slow down in the early 1930s after the transition to sound didn't yield roles of the quality she desired. Did she fade away gracefully? Absolutely not. Hollywood cooled off? Fine, she just pivoted and conquered another stage, literally. She returned triumphantly to Broadway, earning critical acclaim in productions like Uncle Vanya in 1930 and later, Life with Father in the 1940s. This wasn't a retreat, it was a strategic redeployment of her talents. It demonstrated her versatility and her refusal to be defined solely by her cinematic past. If Hollywood wouldn't offer her worthy challenges, she'd find them elsewhere. It spoke volumes about her enduring love for performance and her pragmatic approach to sustaining a long career. Beyond the dramatic decisions and public appearances, glimpses of her daily life reveal a woman of disciplined habits and quiet tastes. As mentioned, she was known for her meticulous organization. You just know her sock drawer was perfectly organized, probably by color and fabric weight. This wasn't just fussiness, it seemed to be part of her need for order and control in a life that had often been chaotic. Her homes, while elegant, were reportedly managed with quiet efficiency. She continued to be an avid reader throughout her life. She also penned her memoirs, Lillian Gish, the movies Mr. Griffith and Me, which were published in 1969. These provide a valuable, if sometimes diplomatically worded, account of her life and career. Writing became another way to shape her narrative and reflect on her extraordinary journey. Even her downtime seemed purposeful, reflecting the same focused intention she brought to her work. These anecdotes paint a picture of a woman who was far more complex and proactive than her often passive screen roles might suggest. She was sharp, determined, fiercely protective of her independence, and possessed of a quiet humor. She applied the same principles of resilience, adapting to change, overcoming obstacles, and integrity, demanding quality, staying true to her standards, to her personal life as she did to her professional one. She wasn't just acting in dramas, she was actively directing the narrative of her own remarkable, well-lived life. Lillian Gish's impact on cinema stretches far beyond the grainy images of silent films or the memory of a girl on an ice floe. Her contributions are woven into the very DNA of screen acting and the history of Hollywood itself. She was more than just a star, she was a fundamental force, leaving an indelible mark that continues to resonate today. Her most profound influence lies in the realm of acting. In an era often dominated by theatricality, Gish pioneered and perfected a more naturalistic, psychologically intuitive style. She demonstrated the immense power of subtlety, proving that a flicker of the eyes or a moment of stillness could convey more emotion than grand, sweeping gestures. This emphasis on internal realism, on thinking the thoughts of the character, laid the groundwork for generations of actors who followed. From Bette Davis, who deeply admired her, to Meryl Streep, countless performers who strive for emotional truth and nuanced portrayal owe a debt to the quiet intensity Gish brought to the screen. She essentially provided the blueprint for serious dramatic acting in the movies. Within the industry structure, Gish stands as a trailblazer. As one of the first true movie superstars, she navigated the chaotic early years and the rise of the studio system with remarkable intelligence and tenacity. Her fight for creative control, her insistence on quality material, and her savvy contract negotiations helped establish a precedent for actors particularly female actors, seeking agency in their careers. While the battle for artistic freedom against commercial pressures continues to this day, Gish was on the front lines early on, proving that a star could be both an artist and a businesswoman. Lillian Gish didn't just walk through the fledgling gates of Hollywood. She helped build part of the foundation, probably while simultaneously negotiating better terms for the building materials. She proved you could be both delicate and dynamite. Later in her life, Gish became a passionate and eloquent advocate for film preservation. Having witnessed the dawn of cinema and contributed so vitally to its artistry, she understood the cultural importance of these early works and was horrified by the casual neglect and destruction of silent films. Many of these treasures were lost forever due to volatile nitrate stock or simple indifference. She used her stature and her voice to campaign tirelessly for the archiving and restoration of film history. She didn't just make film history, she fought to save it, because who else, after all, could truly convey how bone-chillingly cold that way down east ice floe really was? Her efforts contributed significantly to the growing awareness of film as a crucial part of our artistic heritage. Her career, viewed in its entirety, is nothing short of a masterclass in resilience. From the dusty stages of her childhood to the glare of Hollywood spotlights, through industry upheavals, personal struggles, and changing audience tastes, she endured. She adapted, she fought, she reinvented herself, returning to the stage when film roles waned, embracing television later in life, always maintaining her dignity and her commitment to her craft. The sheer longevity of her career, spanning over 75 years of active performance, is astonishing. Her ability to navigate the treacherous waters of fame while holding fast to her artistic integrity, that unwavering commitment to quality seen in masterpieces like Broken Blossoms and The Raw Power of the Wind, remains her most powerful legacy. True artistry, like Lillian Gish herself, endures. While Lillian Gish was celebrated throughout much of her career, the full weight of her contribution, the sheer scale of her pioneering artistry and resilience, received perhaps its most profound acknowledgement in her later years and after her passing in 1993, just shy of her 100th birthday. Hollywood and the world finally took a collective breath to appreciate the magnitude of her legacy. In 1971, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences awarded her an honorary Oscar. The citation read, "For superlative artistry and for distinguished contribution to the progress of motion pictures." It was a long overdue recognition of her foundational role in shaping screen acting. Then, in 1984, she received the American Film Institute's Life Achievement Award, only the second woman, after her admirer Bette Davis, to be so honored. Standing tall and elegant, she accepted the award with characteristic grace, a living link to the very birth of the art form being celebrated. These prestigious honors were Hollywood finally giving her the flowers she so richly deserved, metaphorically speaking, of course. Knowing Lillian, any actual flowers received would likely have been immediately and perfectly arranged. Beyond the major awards, her work continues to be studied in film schools, celebrated at retrospectives, and rediscovered by new generations of cinephiles. Documentaries have explored her life and career, and her memoirs remain a key text for understanding early cinema. She is remembered not just as a silent star, frozen in time like a figure on a Grecian urn, but as a dynamic force, a consummate artist, a shrewd professional, a woman of quiet strength and unwavering principle. She's remembered not just as a silent presence, but as a voice, a strong, clear voice advocating for artistic integrity, a voice that echoed through the industry for nearly a century. Lillian Gish navigated the dizzying heights of global stardom and the challenging lows of career shifts and personal loss with a remarkable consistency of purpose. From the dangerous authenticity of the way down east ice floe, embodying sheer grit, to the subtle heartbreak of Broken Blossoms, showcasing profound artistry, her career was a testament to enduring excellence. She remained, until the very end, a symbol of dignity, resilience, and unwavering dedication to the art of cinema. She wasn't just the first lady of American film, she was its enduring spirit. So want to witness that legendary Gish intensity yourself? So many of her classics are floating around online. Maybe start with the haunting beauty of Broken Blossoms or the epic sweep, and yes, the problematic history of the birth of a nation to understand her early impact. You can often find these on platforms like YouTube, Canopy if you have library access, or specialized classic film streaming services. What's your favorite Lillian Gish moment? Was it the terror in the closet, the defiance against the wind? Or maybe a lesser-known gem? Did we miss a crucial anecdote that perfectly captures her spirit? Let us know in the comments below. Let's keep the Gish story alive. Impressed by her incredible resilience, inspired by her unwavering artistic integrity? Consider supporting Hollywood Unveiled on Patreon. Your support helps us uncover more hidden stories of Hollywood legends and maybe afford slightly less dusty stock footage. And of course, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Hollywood Unveiled, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the lives behind the legends.